And moving on, Manchester City. So I'll get started with this one. If I first thought this was going to be really easy, but then I thought about how good Ruben Diaz has been since he arrived. Um, but at the end of the day, I couldn't put him over Kevin De Bruyne. Um, I mean, we all know how good he is. I do feel bad. I feel like he's been dealing with a lot of injuries the past couple of seasons, and we really haven't gotten to see like a consistent KDB over the past at least year and a half. But I mean, when he's healthy, he's world class, beyond world class. He's arguably the best at his position in the world. So I went with KDB.
Yeah, I've also gone De Bruyne. I think it's good to give a shout out to Ruben Diaz. I think he's improved City a lot this season, especially at the back, which is where they needed improving a lot. But for me, Kevin De Bruyne is one of the best players in the world, and he has been for a couple seasons now since he came back from that injury, which had him out for I think all of the 2017-18 or 18-19 season. One of those two, he was out for pretty much the whole season. I think since he's come back from that, you can't argue that he has been one of the best players in the world. He's creating more chances than almost everybody in the league, bar Jack Grealish, and he's putting up the assist numbers, which he always has. He has dropped off on the goals a little bit this season, but yeah, for me, it has to be De Bruyne.
Yeah, I obviously agree with both of you. It has to be De Bruyne. It's just a creative freak. Like the numbers he puts up, the assists he gets. He was unlucky, obviously, not to break the Premier League assist record last season. One thing I will say is that if we did this a year ago, I expect a few of us would have mentioned Aguero. Obviously, he's been unlucky with his injury. He hasn't played for a while now, but probably last year you would have put him in top 3 strikers in the world, maybe, or up there. So, I think it's worth mentioning him, but has to be Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah, I think if we did this a year ago, we could definitely make a case for Aguero. But at this point, it's been a year and a half where we can see that he's regressed a little bit. Beyond Man United, Ames, you can go ahead with this one.
All right, Man United, yeah, it has to be Fernandes. I mean, I expect people make cases for Rashford and Pogba. Maybe not you two, but some people would. Pogba's been so inconsistent for me over the past couple of seasons. You've seen like very average players lock him up in certain games, like James McCarthy. If we're talking about the Palace game, as much as he's got loads of talent, he's not doing it consistently enough for me for the talent that he does have. And it's almost a similar thing for Rashford, although he's got the excuse of being younger. Fernandes for me, the way he's come in and just completely changed around their team and turned them into title contenders, has to be him.
Yeah, they were desperate for somebody like him for so long. So I think that makes it even more stand out even more, the fact that he came into a team that was just desperate for a player like that. And he's world class. So yeah, I want Bruno as well. Just racking up assists and goals. Yes, a lot of them are penalties, but he does score some non-penalty goals as well. So yeah, with Bruno, that was an easy choice.
Yeah, it was an easy choice for me as well. I mean, I think Rashford and Pogba both on their day. You could watch a Man United game and you'd think that Rashford and Pogba were miles better than Bruno is, but the consistency that Bruno brings. He's also, I think, the quickest joint fastest player to 15 assists in Premier League history, alongside Dimitri Payet and Eric Cantona, which obviously those are 3 fantastic players. So for me, Bruno definitely, the influence he's brought to that Man United team. I think it's hard to look past him being their best player, even though some people would want to see Paul Pogba. For me, it's Bruno.
All right, on to Newcastle. I'll get this one started. So I didn't have too much issue with this one. I went with Alan Saint-Maximin, a player who's at a club that isn't very good, let's be honest, but he particularly is very good. He sticks out in that team. It's just crazy how, at least I think, that the rest of that Newcastle team is just so boring and dull. And part of that is because of how Steve Bruce plays. But you have Saint-Maximin, who's just obviously an incredible player. And I think this is his 3rd season in the Prem, and like the past 2 seasons, he's been top 2 or 3 in dribbles completed. So yeah, I went with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually going to disagree here. I've gone with Callum Wilson. Callum Wilson is he's got 10 goals now, so he's up to 10 in the league this season. He's got 4 assists as well. He is he's got so he's hit the double figures. I watched him play against Everton the other day, and he took his 2 goals really, really well. Something about Saint Maximin is that he does beat a lot of players in the same way that Adama Traore does. But for me, I think he lacks something in a bit of output. I always find that he isn't quite there with the final ball and the final finish in the same way that Adama Traore is. So for me, I just prefer almost how direct Callum Wilson is, and I just prefer that in a player. I would obviously happily have Saint Maximin in because you can't doubt his class, but yeah, I think I went for Wilson for that reason. I also like to put a quick mention out to Dubravka, who's been injured all this season but was good for them last season, and Jamal Lascelles at the back, who's quite a good centre half for them. But yeah, for me, Callum Wilson.
Yeah, so I've got the casting vote, obviously, and yeah, I had to go for Callum Wilson. I just think he's such a gunman. To score like 10 goals in that team at this stage of the season is just incredible. And I think he'll score goals wherever he goes. I think he's such a top player. That being said, I mean, Alan St. Maximin's such a good player, and people will bring up his like goals scored and assists as like as reasons to say he isn't that good. But I think he's one of those players you need to leave out the stats, because watching them play with him and without him is just, they're completely different. He brings so much energy and just so much attacking output to them. I think he's such a top player, but yeah, Callum Wilson for me.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue. It's 2 against 1, so I can't be arguing here. I do also want to give a shout because you mentioned Dubravka, Leon, but
Yeah,
Darlow has also been very good this season to replace him. So
yeah,
he's also been top class. So I wouldn't never put him ahead of the 2 that we have, but still win it.
Yeah, they're blessed with 2 very good goalkeepers there, definitely.
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what they do going forward with them. Moving on. Do you guys know who's next off the top of your head?
Sheffield United.
United.
Yeah.
Right. This was actually for me the hardest one. I did quite a lot of research into it. I was trying to work out who it is. I mean, last season we all would have said Dean Henderson without a shadow of a doubt, I'm sure. But obviously without him, they've struggled so badly, and you have to kind of pick the best from that. And I had a few names. I think Sander Berge, or Berger, whatever you want to call him, is probably the obvious option. And at the age of 22, he's doing really well. But I think John Fleck is doing similar things to him in that team. Obviously, he's a bit older, so he's not as promising a player. But I think he's also doing he's got a similar output defensively and going forward. In fact, I'd argue he's better than Berge going forward. But actually, I've gone for Ethan Ampadu as their best player. I mean, I know he's still young, but for me, he's looked probably their best player this season. He's adapted brilliantly well to their system, which obviously isn't the most normal system to kind of adapt to, coming from someone who didn't play there last season. And I think he's been brilliant defensively, but also in terms of creating chances, he's done a lot in that team, which is obviously something they've struggled with. So I'd like to put Ampadu's name, into the hat for that one.
I'll go. I think he's been good. I think he started off slowly, and he's really been coming on recently. I did go with Sander Berge though, or Berge. I think we saw last season how strong of a player he was, and obviously he's missed the majority of this season. So, I mean, it's hard to go off of anything this year, but they clearly miss him. Not saying that he's on like the Basuma level, but I think he kind of is like that type of player for Sheffield United where he's just so impactful in the midfield. So I don't think he's like anything special. He's a good player, but Sheffield United honestly don't have a ton of quality this season. So I just went with Sander Berge.
Yeah, I've gone with Sander Berge as well. Purely over the, I mean, I respect all of the names that have been thrown in the hat. John Fleck is a good midfielder, as is Ampadu. Obviously, plays almost sometimes in the midfield and sometimes in that back 3 or back 5 for Sheffield United. For me, Sander Berge, I think just has that influence over the Sheffield United team a lot. I think they, as Mikey said, they miss him a lot when he's not playing. I think he drives the ball forward really well, which is what I like in him. He's a strong, powerful holding midfielder. So I've gone for him. I'd also like to throw Jack O'Connell's name in the hat. I think he's that centre back that they miss the most when he's not in the side. But yeah, I mean, I've gone Sander Berg, which I think obviously gives him the place in the combined list. But I do respect the almost the outside shout of Ampadu. Obviously, he's very young, still 20 years old. So it'll be interesting to see if he manages to get into that Chelsea team, or when he obviously at the end of the season eventually goes back to Chelsea. It'll be interesting to see if they want to incorporate him there or maybe send him out on loan again.
Yeah. I was just being controversial, to be honest, but no, he won't get in that Chelsea team. I'm pretty certain. But interesting, you mentioned Jack O'Connell. He's actually only played 2 games this season. I think due to injury, unfortunately, which
it's been,
could be a reason for a lot of their struggle. But I think John Egan has been kind of just as good as him last season, and also this season. Well, this season you can't really praise any of their defence, to be honest. But and then just one more name I'd like to put out. I think Jayden Bogle's a massive talent at right wing back, and I think with him in the side, they've actually played 9, won 4, drawn 3, and lost 3. Does that add up? Doesn't add up. Does that add up? Almost adds up. Whatever. They've only lost to Palace, Man City, and Tottenham when he's played. So I think he should start a lot more at that right wing back role. And we've seen how good he was at Derby. It could be a good prospect for the future.
Yeah, definitely. Now that I think about it, I mean, they've lost Dean Henderson over the summer. They lost Berge for most of the season, and then O'Connell as well. So, starting to make sense to me as I think about it, why they've been so poor this year.
Yeah, I think when a Premier League side is starting 38-year-old Phil Jagielka at the back, you've got to be considering why that is, and that is kind of why I threw Jack O'Connell's name in the hat, just because I think you've really noticed when him and obviously Dean Henderson have gone how bad their defence has been. That's something worry.
Yeah. Moving on, Southampton. Southampton has a lot of good players, especially this season. I do want to shout out Yannick Vestergaard. I think he's been top class. But at the end of the day, I did go Danny Ings. Sorry, my Zoom is there we go. I went Danny Ings. Every time I watch Southampton, and I know he hasn't been quite as good as he was last season, but his movement off the ball, his passing, I think he does everything really well. And obviously he's given Southampton a player up front that's just really, really good, which they had not had, which they have had previously, but right before he came, they did not have. So I do also want to shout out, and I would not put him near the top, but Che Adams has also been much improved this season as well. His physicality and hold up play is great. And then James Ward-Prowse too, just especially with his free kick ability. So, but I did go with Ings.
I've got Ings as well. I think 22 goals last season. I think he's got 7 already this season. He's such a top draw striker. I think if you put him at any team in the league, he scores goals. He's that smart a player. He's that quick. He's that clinical in front of goal. He's brilliant. And then second, I put James Ward-Prowse. I think he is actually a lot more than his set pieces. He really does drive that team with his. He's got a massive work rate, puts in a lot of tackles. So yeah, he's definitely a good player. But Danny Ings for me.
I mean, I've gone Danny Ings as well. I think this one was a fairly easy one. The only player which I think comes close is James Ward-Prowse. I think there are the honourable mentions, like you say, of Vestergaard, who's improved a lot this season, and Kyle Walker-Peters at right back. I think he's a fantastic fullback. I think kind of fullback that Spurs could really do with right now on that right side. I think they'll be regretting letting Walker-Peters go ahead of maybe Aurier, or obviously bringing in Doherty with signings. So. Yeah, I think it's Danny Ings for me. It's not too much of a difficult one, though.
Yeah, I pulled up XG as well, and Danny Ings has 7 goals this season. His XG is 4.74, and last year he had 22 goals and he had a 15.66 XG. So he's
unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, burying chances that a lot of other strikers would not be burying. Unanimous for Danny Ings. Moving on, we have Wolves, West Brom, West Ham.
Spurs next.
Yeah, Spurs. So, Leon, you can go ahead and get started with this one.
I mean, this one for me is one of the easiest ones. I mean, Harry Kane is a fantastic goal scorer, fantastic creator.